Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Chicanery. This is your hostesses with the mostesses, Danny and JT.
Hello, once again.
Yes, so we are recording this right on the heels of the open wheel bonanza because there has been so much that has gone on since the last time we recorded that, well, we needed to split this one up because otherwise it would be a 2.5, 3 hour episode. And I don't think anybody wants to listen to us talk for that long, certainly not in one sitting. Um, so this is the sporty cars. These are the things that are wedgie shaped and awesome that I love so much. So we have got WEC and IMSA, but we are going to start with the much promised IMSA season recap. So so I guess take it away, Frenda.
I guess starting the recap off with, I guess, the best race of the season and the worst race of the season, as per usual. There really aren't too many races that I can say, like, just stick out as, like, the worst race of the season. IMSA races usually are pretty interesting. There's not really anything where I'm like, yeah, this race sucked. Um, I mean, there were some races where I thought were kind of, like, a little bit drab, a little bit boring, per se. But most of them are pretty good. Best race of the season, honestly, probably. I mean, Daytona was pretty good. It always is usually good. Same with Petit Le Mans, pretty good races. Now, the teams that I like didn't do so well, but you know what? That's okay. I'll still say they were good races.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also it gets tough to kind of separate out, quotes, best from, favorites for various reasons, and at least I am particularly guilty of that. I guess I will point that out. I will speak for myself there. Um, I always really, really enjoy Detroit. I loved seeing the cars on the new street circuit. I thought that was fantastic. Um, and then plus it was much cooler that Sunday, so slightly cooler track temps. Racing was a little bit better because quali and stuff for both Indy and IMSA was kind of a mess, but the cooler track temps that Sunday because I was in Detroit because my sister graduated from high school that weekend. It was, oh my lord, it was hot. The Friday and Saturday it was like 90 degrees, and then the Sunday it cooled down to about 78. So I enjoyed that. Um, Petit Le Mans is a tough one. It's exciting. It's Petit Le Mans. We talked about it when we did the recap for that race. Some of the driving was a bit curious, a bit questionable that race, and that's one of the things that could almost also qualify it as a worst race too. So I'm not quite sure where I stand on that one, but no, but I enjoyed Detroit, and I always enjoy Daytona. That's always fantastic. So those are probably my two favorites for the season.
Continuing, teams and drivers that exceeded expectations or were disappointments. I mean, I can think of at least one team off the top of my head that I'm like, where their performance was a little disappointing throughout the year. But I'm like, maybe I'll let it slide because it was the debut year of GTP. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely thinking certainly early season. It was definitely the factory. It was the BMW team in GTP. It's just like, oh my god, and that had to do really more with the car than anything else. I'm gonna be honest. I expected, and I guess clarification. Vassar Sullivan has turned into a bit of a juggernaut in the GT ranks, but I expected a little bit more from Corvette this year. To be perfectly honest. There were just some, needless penalties here and there, and I know, BOP kind of being what it is, where then it seemed like the car was just slow. And I'm just like, for what is your final year as the factory effort, I'm like, I figured if there was a year they were going to go all out, it would be this year, but it ended with kind of a whimper.
I mean, it did. It was like kind of getting edged at least because I'm like, they were Petit Le Mans. I mean, I thought they would have at least gone out with a bang in a positive way, not just the car randomly dying and them having to retire from the race.
Yeah, it was like I said, it was such a shame. Because I mean, and don't get me wrong, mean, I love my, big yellow boys, but yeah, like I said, I expected more from Corvette this year. And maybe that's just part of the mesospheric standards that they've set for themselves over the last, 25 years, where that car has, broadly speaking, always been fairly competitive. But nope, I wanted more, but well, we didn't get it, so I guess I should just shut up.
Um, the other classes, LMP3 is just LMP3. I mean,
Oh my
there really
god.
isn't much to say for them. LMP2, I honestly don't pay that much attention to LMP2, but I don't know. There are like a few people I'm like, I guess Ben Keating, I can say. I mean, he's always just a show out, so it's no shocker there.
Yeah, exactly. Ben is him. So pretty much everything that he gets in, he's quick. So there's no real question. Now I would like to know quite what happened because, if anybody remembers, was driving the Corvette. So I'm be curious to know quite what went on there. But I'm not sure if we'll ever know. IMSA, surprisingly, just isn't as catty as a lot of the other series. You don't really hear information like that slip out very much. So, he announced that he wasn't with Corvette anymore, and then that was like it. I was like, okay.
So GTD, at least in GTD Pro, Porsches, we talked about it before. It's kind of unfortunate that they've mainly been plagued with BOP issues the whole season, so they weren't really all that there. No, no surprise. I mean, they're at least Faf is changing to McLaren next season, so I think that might be why they're changing is because the BOP is just not good on the Porsches anymore.
Yeah, possibly, but yeah, no, definitely, and yeah, GTD. It really is the biggest disappointment from that. Really is the Porsches. They're just so slow. Yeah, they're just slow. Maybe we'll see a change going forward. Maybe they'll tweak that, but is this year's just horrific. Was there any context where the Porsches were competitive? Because I can't
At
think of
least like
one.
Sebring. Sebring is like the
Oh,
main race where
yeah.
I can remember they were pretty competitive because I don't know if they won, but I know they got a podium or something. So like there was some change between Daytona and Sebring, which Daytona was pretty awful, so to speak, and they were able to get some changes. Again, we mentioned this before, it wasn't without them literally getting into a fight with IMSA over it.
Mhm.
So some of it's probably just not something they want to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. They basically had to threaten to rage quit to get some change to the BOP, which was absolutely wild to see that all unfold on Twitter. It's like, oh my god. But so I guess the big news of the season was GTP. Now, I loved DPI. I thought it was fantastic. When you had because it was Acura, Mazda, and Cadillac in DPI, and I thought it was a great time. So I was super
Yeah,
hyped,
I
and
occasionally miss the DPIs, but I like the
yeah,
GTPs too. They're also cool.
yep. So they were replaced. We have GTP, of course, GTP, LMDH, Hypercar. Doesn't matter what the name is; they're all more or less the same. Um, and that made its debut this year. So, given the immense amount of hype going into the season for these cars, now that the season has been over for, well, truth be told, about a month now, what do you think? Exceeded expectations, lived up to expectations, or were we feeling a bit underwhelmed by the class?
I'm gonna say, for the most part, it lived up to my expectations. I guess I guess in terms of it being underwhelming, I can only just like pinpoint specific teams that I had higher expectations for them to perform better than they did. Notably Porsche Penske. I was hoping that they would have performed at least a little bit better than they have. I mean, IMSA, they didn't do too bad. They did have some issues starting out at Daytona, issues with like their battery and stuff like that. And I mean, same with BMW. It wasn't as bad as BMW per se, but they did have some issues. Um, but I mean, I feel like their season, their debut was a little bit underwhelming. At least, and even in the World Endurance Championship, I would definitely say very underwhelming from them. Everybody else, I mean, it's kind of expected. To be honest, I didn't expect BMW to struggle as much as they did at Daytona at first. I thought that, it would have been, occasional issues here and there, sure, because it's a new car and you still kind of have to figure some things out, growing pains or whatever. Of course, Acura's just ran away with it. Not too surprising there. I mean, I was a little bit shocked that they had no issues whatsoever at the first race. I'm like, no issues for y'all. Very interesting. I mean, everybody else seemed to have some problems, but I don't know. I would say it met my expectations.
Yeah, I broadly agree with that. I was super excited heading into the season, and the biggest surprise was that yeah, not only was just that BMW was so bad, but also that even Porsche Penske's had some issues. Because when that was originally announced, I was like, the great, we're gonna have the sports car equivalent of the Death Star, and that ended up not quite being the case. They were plagued by some early issues, and even the Team Yoda, the customer cars, were occasionally quicker than the factory team. And I'm like, what on earth is going on here? But it turned into a super tight championship, and that went down to the wire. So I'm not mad. I'm certainly looking forward, to more folks joining next year because I know we've got Lambo is going to be in, although I don't know at quite what capacity they will be running. I don't know if they'll be, having like one car, split between WEC and IMSA or quite what. I'm pretty sure Alpine is going to be WEC only for next year. So,
Yeah, they're only in the World Endurance Championship for 2024. I think at some point they'll probably join IMSA, just not next year.
hmm and then we still have to kind of hear about what Aston Martin and quite where they're going to focus their efforts with the Valkyrie project again. But yeah, no, broadly speaking, I this was a great time. This was super cool. Like you, I do still occasionally miss the DPIs. They were just great, and certainly when they got the field closed up, because the Cadillacs just beat the hell out of everybody for a few years. But once they closed up the field and got the Acura and particularly the Mazda competitive, it made for some fantastic racing. So, I think as they refine this formula, I think we'll see the field close up and get just like I said, I think we'll get some really good on track racing. But overall, thumbs up.
Thumbs up from me as well. One thing I feel like IMSA needs to do is change their full course yellow procedures for next season because I'm like, oh my god, that just kills me. It just kills me that they will throw full course yellows for like some tiny ass pieces of debris in like one turn when the rest of the racetrack is fine. It's like we don't need a full course yellow for this. And then we've talked about this before, kind of, where it's like it feels like it's gotten worse over the past few years, mainly because the field in IMSA is growing. So the more cars you have in a race, especially at a race like Daytona where you have like up to 60 entries, it's like that's gonna be a lot of full course yellows. And it's like we're gonna end up spending a good chunk of the race. We're gonna end up spending 12 of the 24 hours under full course yellow.
Yeah, it did. It certainly with Daytona, it sure felt like it. It felt like every time the race would start to settle in, full course yellow. And it's like, for what? It's like some debris in Indianapolis. It's like, why?
Hopefully we can kind of cut down on it a little bit since LMP3 is not racing at Daytona at least with
Yeah,
WeatherTech. So I'm hoping, okay, maybe that'll decrease the full course yellows a little bit. I'm not hopeful that that will bring about like huge change because again, you can have incidents in other classes, and considering the fact that a lot of LMP3 teams are moving to P2s due to the P3s being axed in weather tech and basically being shuffled to, I think, like a pilot challenge or something like that. I think they also created like a whole new other like branch where it's just LMP3, so they can go over there and run into each other instead of the P2s and the GTPs and the GT cars. But I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens. Yeah, I'm certainly like I said, there needs to be a revision. Don't know what prompted this, and then it was so bad because it felt like Le Mans. I felt like they were copying effectively the IMSA full course yellow. And same thing, it felt like every time the race started to settle in, full course yellow for some reason, safety car out, and it's just like, why? So yeah, hopefully there are some changes. There has been lots of grumbling about it this year, so we'll see what happens. I'm granted not particularly hopeful, but I think taking P2s out of the equation should hopefully calm things down a little bit because sports car racing has progressed past the need for P2s
The P3s, you mean?
or P3s. Yes, thank you.
I mean, sometimes the P2s act like P3s, so
Yeah,
it's
they do kind
sometimes
of.
easy to get them confused.
Yeah.
I know the IMSA schedule for next season that came out a while ago, but I know they did adjust some of the dates, I think, because there was some conflict with other like prestigious sports car races that a lot of other people will also race in. Like I think switched they changed the dates for Watkins Glen, the 6 hours of the Glen, to avoid the conflict with the 24 hours of Spa. Because I know people complained about that. So that's at least one conflict avoided. I think there's might be like two others, but at least one.
Yeah, that's nice. We talked about it, when folks were a bit grumpy about it the weekend of that race. I just don't understand how that happened in the first place. It's like, the series, they put their schedules out pretty far in advance. And we've talked about the way WEC and IMSA have, effectively, deepened ties, certainly from a car development perspective and kind of the alignment of the classes. Like, so you really mean to tell me that nobody from either the IMSA or the WEC side, sat down and said, "Oh, yeah, we should probably not do this." So yeah, like I said, I don't know how it was greenlit in the first place, but I'm glad that they fixed it, and it doesn't create a conflict for certainly for people like me, who like to watch both.
I mean, I think the 24 hours of Spa that's just GT cars. I think that's I don't think it's the World Endurance Championship for that. I think it's like GT World Challenge or GT like Intercontinental or something
Oh
that
yeah,
does that series. So the issue probably would have been between IMSA and them.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's one of those things, my brain likes to kind of categorize it all under one. Because to be fair, I do it with the Michelin Pilot series and stuff, even though that is technically its own thing. My brain still throws it under the broader IMSA label just because it's easy to remember. But yeah, no, that is a good point. But I mean, even still, I think my point still stands. It's like, talk to the powers that be, and like I said, don't figure out how to not have this happen again. It's amazing that it took a basically hand wringing en masse to um to basically to get them to make that change in the first place. Like I said, I do genuinely think it should have never happened.
I mean, I guess part of the problem is that racing series in general don't like cooperating with each other and working with each other. So because they don't like doing that, you're inevitably going to have issues like this come up.
Yeah, which I think is just it's wild. It's like especially given that you have so much cross pollination of fans between series. Particularly when you start talking about sports car racing, you don't have the same kind of tribalism that you can get with like F1 v Indy or NASCAR v IndyCar, or NASCAR v F1, which seems like that's the big one that's always on my timeline. Um, you don't really have that in sports car racing. Everybody just generally watches everything. So it's wild to me that you have this sort of certainly at the executive level, at the organizer level, that's where the tribalism sort of rears its head. I think that's crazy.
I mean, it is. At least for me, I think it's a little crazy. It's just I don't know. To me, it's just like okay, just work together. It's not that hard. Teamwork, you learned this when you were like 5 years old.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what happens when you have a bunch of, rich dudes with giant egos. That kind of thing goes out the window. But anyway, so we touched on it already. That Lambo and Alpine are joining the hybrid prototype game for 2024. Like I said, Alpine is WEC only for 2024. Lambo, they said that they are contesting IMSA. Again, we don't know quite what the split is, or at least I don't. I haven't heard anything that says what quite how they're going to divide that out. If they're going to have, like I said, one car in each, or maybe if they'll have two cars in WEC and maybe just one in IMSA. No, we don't know, or at least I don't, unless I've missed something, which is distinctly possible. I've had my hands full with F1 these last few weeks, so. But it'll be fun to see the relative competitiveness of each car.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess there's been some like changes with drivers at least in IMSA. So the first thing, I mean, this happened a while ago, a few weeks ago, but we're still talking about it. Tom Blomqvist has moved to AXR Cadillac Racing and will race there with Hippo Durrani and Jack Aiken, I think. Um, I don't know how well that'll go, truthfully. I mean, I definitely think it's going to take a little bit of time for him to adjust to Cadillac and not Acura. But I mean, I think that's an interesting change. I mean, everybody had to go somewhere since Meyer Shank is not in IMSA or they're pausing their IMSA program for now.
Yeah, I don't really know how I feel about that, to be honest. Um, I mean, the good news is that Tom will get to experience the caddy bump start portal to hell, which I just think is the greatest noise that a race car has ever made. You listen to it leave on the pits on the motor, and then you hear the engine fire up, and it's great. And he'll get to experience that, and I think everybody should before they die. Um, but as for certainly betting into that driver lineup, we'll kind of just have to see how that goes. So I'm gonna try and keep an open mind, and I'll reserve all judgment until Daytona when they get on track to kind of see how that goes.
I mean, I feel like the driver lineup is a little like it feels a little random. Like it just feels like these are people that wouldn't really be together. Like I mean, even like when he was at Meyer Shank, the other people that he was driving with, it kind of felt like natural at least. I don't even know if that's even a thing, but there's sometimes there's just driver lineups where I'm like, why are these people together? Like they kind of feel like they don't really match up, even though this is not matchmaker with sports car racing and endurance racing, but still.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I said I'm gonna keep an open mind, 'cause I had exactly the same thought. I was like, well, this is a team. This is a driver lineup that exists. This is the most driver lineup of all time. That's kind of what this feels like. They could gel super well together come January, and then it's like, okay, it's fine. But,
I mean, it's just
certainly,
like I feel like some of their driving styles aren't the same. At least
yes,
when it comes to Pippo Durrani versus Tom and Jack, it's like they're not the same level.
no, no, absolutely not. You are completely correct. So, yeah, we'll see. I will reserve judgment until we see how it goes. But no, like I said, I had the exact same thoughts. I'm like, well, this is random as shit. Why are you here? But so next is the potential, the little bit of floating around of MSR and Alpine. I'm like, what? So
Yeah, that's kind of random. I mean, I've only seen at least like one or two things about it where it's like that they would potentially go with Alpine when they return, because I'm assuming that when MSR returns to IMSA, that will also be when Alpine has joined IMSA and has a car there. So other than that,
I
I
mean,
think. that's also another random thing that's like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I saw the same thing that you did, and I'm just like, what? Why? I don't know. Maybe somebody somewhere is just bored that day, and so they wrote that up. But I mean, I guess it could work. It will depend on entirely how successful Alpine is in WEC. It's tough for me to not be colored by their Formula One efforts, and that team has been a continuous car crash since Barcelona, basically, the Formula One team. So
I'm hoping it does not go that poorly when they are in the World Endurance Championship when they join Hypercar.
I completely agree. And I don't think it will, but it's really hard for me to not see anything Alpine and like I said, and not think of the Formula One team and just go, ew. That's just
I'm
really
also
hard.
hoping that BMW, since they're gonna be joining the World Endurance Championship as well. I'm also hoping that it does not, um, lack of a better term, just start off in a crash and burn. Like I am hoping that does not happen because technically they have had at least a year in IMSA to kind of, figure things out. So I'm like, okay, hopefully we don't start off and, an hour into I don't even know what track they're racing at first, Qatar or something, an hour into that race, the car is dead. Um,
Yeah, I agree. I'm hoping that again, that just because they've already had the year to sort that out, it'll be okay. And then running WEC and IMSA simultaneously, basically accelerated development to help the car get better because you've got basically two concurrent data pools to pull from and understand what the car is good at, what it's not good at, where it's quick, where it's not, so on and so forth. So I think they'll be fine, but I'd be honest, it'd be really, really funny if that's how the WEC season started for the BMW. That'd be that'd be fucking
I'm
hilarious,
sorry,
frankly.
but I would laugh, but then also kind of feel bad because some of the drivers that were on the lineup at Daytona, at least I know for a fact, like Sheldon Vanderlyn was at Daytona and had to deal with that horrendous, like they had to deal with that, and it'd be kind of sad because I mean I'm sure he would probably drive the BMW in the World Endurance Championship, so I would kind of feel bad that it's like, damn, this is just a double whammy.
Yeah, exactly. So next up is the Colin Brown to CrowdStrike, which is a move.
I mean, there were the other people at least on the lineup is pretty good lineup of drivers, so I wouldn't bet against them. I don't remember who else it was. Um, I mean, I'm kind of disappointed that he's not in a GTP car because I'm like, I feel like his talent level, he probably should be in GTP and not LMP2.
Agreed.
But hopefully by like 2025, he's back in a GTP. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see as the GTP field fills out a little bit more. There may well be space for him, and that was kind of my thing. It was, I feel like he is wasting his talent a little bit, hanging around in P2. But I understand. I mean, you take the seat that you can get. I completely understand it, especially with a category as fluid as sports car racing, where teams come and go all the time. So yeah, so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, no, it's a pretty stacked driver lineup. So he's certainly in good hands there.
I mean, I truthfully don't think anybody on that lineup will be doing any sort of loafing per se. I think it's all pretty good people, pretty talented people. Again, probably wouldn't bet against them.
No, I completely agree.
Another driver changes, I guess. Wayne Taylor Racing now has two entries for the IMSA Endurance Cup, and their second entry will have Brendan Hartley, Colton Herta, and Louis Delatraz. Which I'm like, you know what? Congratulations, y'all already won the Rolex 24.
Uh,
Everybody else might as well not even show up.
yeah, pretty much. This is, again, talking about stacked driver lineups. This is one of them. And then the fact that they've got, two cars running. I, yeah, okay. You know, sew up hand them the championship trophy. Once the cars unload at Daytona, you might as well. But yeah, good for them. I mean, it's a good driver lineup. So I
I mean,
don't see.
hopefully everybody else in the GTP field ups their game, like they step it up, and because at least they know what to expect now after, first season, get out the growing pains and any sort of issues. So hopefully we don't see any of what we saw last year or this year rather happen again. It's possible, but I'm hoping that it does not happen
Yeah,
because I would hate to see. I mean, I'm a hater, but I would just hate to see Acura run away with it again. Like I I need some competition. Like again, everybody else just gonna have to step it up.
yeah, absolutely, and maybe they will. Um, I a good analogy. Granted, this is well outside of our viewership remit, probably, but for the five of you listening to this that also happen to pay attention to American Formula Drift, you'll remember when the Worthhouse Drift team joined in 2015. Uh, Peter Vidchek and James Dean, they just came and they just cleaned house for 3 years. It was back to back to back for James, winning Formula Drift titles. And it basically took for Worthhouse to just leave drifting completely, is what it took. But you noticed that that following year, everybody had prepped like James and Peter were going to be back. And it raised the level of their quality of driving significantly. The floor was so much higher than it had been previously. So I'm hoping we see kind of a similar thing happen here. Um, because,
Yeah,
well, we
I'm
just
hoping
need it.
that will prompt people to, again, step their game up a little bit, prompt teams to step it up a little bit. And same with the field, the GTP field, just expanding in general with at least one more entry, one or two more. Again, don't know what Lambo is planning on doing, but we know they will be in IMSA for sure. So hopefully, at least like that is some sort of encouragement to the teams to kind of get it together a little bit.
Yeah, like, come on now. We cannot let Acura run away with this thing. And yes,
They
you are
can't
here.
let Acura run away with it, and I refuse to see Porsche Penske waffling around behind the customer Porsche 963s again. I swear, if I see that happen again, I'm going to literally put my head through a wall.
Uh, but moving on to the other side of the pond for sports car racing, we had the World Endurance Championship season finale at Bahrain. And finally, we had talked about it last time you and I sat down and rooting for the Iron Dames, and they fucking did it. They won the final LMGTE race, and they finally notched their first race or class win, I guess more accurately. And holy shit, let's go.
I mean, that's really exciting to see. I'm kind of sad about LMGTE going away, but at least it ended on a positive note. I can't complain about that. And Corvette won the championship altogether, so it ended on a positive note. I can't really complain there.
Yeah, absolutely. If there was ever a way to send off GTE, this was the way to do it. Iron Dames getting the race win, Corvette taking the championship. At least they got it somewhere. Um, yeah, this is the way. This was absolutely the way to do it. I like you. I will miss the GTE cars quite a bit. I loved this this era of GT regs. I thought it was great. But I mean, we talked about it a bit a handful of episodes ago. It feels like about once every decade, 15 years, we just hit the reset button on GT cars, and well, we have reached that period. So I guess I really shouldn't be too surprised. But also, Toyota won they won the hypercar championship, perhaps unsurprisingly, but they did
Nobody's
win.
shocked there. I mean, them winning the Hypercar Championship is just about as shocking as Max Verstappen winning F1 races this season.
Yeah, it's. I mean, Toyota, they were just the dominant car. I would have been surprised if they didn't. I mean, now don't get me wrong. Throughout sort of the spell of domination, they've had a few moments where they have almost thrown it away entirely on their own. Like, let's be clear. You know, in my brain, especially, I mean, well, you remember Porsche and Audi and LMP1 just as much as I do. Um, it wasn't until they left that Toyota could start winning anything. It's not to say that Toyota isn't a decent outfit, but in this case, they had such a big developmental head start. Well, that's really kind of the big thing. So it's just like, okay, fine, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there was some drama with them going into turn one at the first lap of the race where they got punted by Cadillac, number two Cadillac.
Yeah, whatever. I, Toyota has done some kind of, questionable stuff itself over the course of the season.
They have, and they didn't get any penalties for it. And it's like the one of like the higher ups at Toyota was like, "Man, this is so unprofessional. I can't believe he would do this." And it's like, okay, I mean, there was one time that you got punted by Earl Bamber, and honestly, I feel like to call it unprofessional is a little bit, it's reaching a little bit just because it wasn't intentional. Like there was no intention behind. Yeah, he was just gonna dive bomb them, like ordered to take them out or anything like that. Like no, it didn't happen on purpose. And in a way, it's kind of they're kind of throwing stones in a glass house because I'm like, if we go back and look at all the stuff y'all have done and sent people off the track and sent them damn near into orbit, sent them to Mars, speaking of one specific driver on Toyota's lineup that has done that several times but has not faced any consequences for it, Buemi, looking at him, they can't really speak, if you ask me.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It feels like a lot of crying over spilt milk. It's like you locked up the championship. It's like, yeah, Errol, it seemed like it was an honest mistake. And it's like, okay, fine, you get nudged once or twice, just fucking deal with it. But nope, they just, well, no. So, I mean, it is what it is. They're gonna get upset, and well, that's just the way it goes. But it seems like a whole lot of crying about absolutely nothing, to be perfectly honest. But oh well. But speaking of crying and perceived disasters, Macau is coming up.
Yeah, I think that's this weekend.
Yeah. So, what do you reckon? Will we have the almost yearly tradition of a 30 car pileup, or will everybody behave themselves?
You know what? Again, I feel like this is all dependent upon what drivers have, what ideas drivers have, and how willing they are to be on their best behavior. Because I can some at least looking at some of the people that are supposed to be racing there, I'm like, I'm not too confident that they're gonna be on their best behavior, especially when it comes to like if it comes down to like towards the end of the race and it's like it might be a dire situation and it's like somebody does a dive bomb into a corner, then all of a sudden 20 car pileup. It really depends.
Yeah, exactly. We'll have to see what happens. I figure that we are going to have one of the gigantic pileups. Like I said, it's practically an annual tradition. Um, so
And
I
I will
figure
be
we
there no matter what.
exactly. I will be eagerly awaiting it. So yeah, I think we will, but we'll see. Because truth be told, when everybody behaves themselves, Macau can produce some pretty cool racing. But just the issue is that not everybody always behaves themselves.
I mean,
And
the whole track I feel like is just a giant meme. Like it's to some degree it doesn't even feel like it's real. It's like this is a real track. Like it's just so funny. And then literally the commentator, that one quote that everybody quotes every time, like that one video of the Macau pileup, the infamous one, just is so funny to me. Every time I see it, I laugh. It's just so funny. It makes my day.
yeah, it is. It's ridiculous. And then you watch them just continue to basically drive into each other. And it looks like one of those infinite spawning glitches is actually what it looks like from like GTA 3 and GTA 4, where you would get cars that would just spawn in on top of each other and then it pushes itself up. That's what that crash looks like. And it's insane. But
It's even worse that it was caused by one person. Like literally one driver caused that.
yes, But that is the beauty of Macau. It only takes one sometimes to create those, 50 car pileups. But but yes, and then the big chat, or I say big chat within DTM, is Apt Motorsports is sponsored by Red Bull for the 2024 season, which is very funny.
I mean, can we talk about how ironic that is? Like that is the epitome of a come full circle moment. Like
Yes, it absolutely is.
they literally turned around and they got taken out by an apt car literally like 2 years ago. And now they're like, yeah, we're gonna sponsor y'all. You're sponsoring the same person that intentionally took y'all out 2 years ago.
Hmm. Yes, no, that was not lost upon me, and I thought it was hilarious. It's one of those, you know, I'm gonna buy your whole life kind of things is basically what's happened here. And I'm certainly about it. So, like I said, I think it's very funny, and we were talking a little bit off air about it, but certainly as Audi is pulling the plug on its GT car project, Apt is of course known for being an Audi tuning house. They have been since time immemorial at this point. I wonder what manufacturer they're going to jump to when Audi bails out of DTM again, basically. Yeah, I know you had put forth McLaren as a potential option.
I mean, I don't,
Um,
I don't know how many are there even McLarens in DTM right now? I don't know.
to be fair, I don't think there are currently, but given this that they're basically just GT3 cars, McLaren does build one, so there's no reason, unless McLaren just really doesn't want to, there's no reason why they couldn't bring one over. My guess was probably Ferrari. They'd get, a 296 GT3 and, use that, which would be very, very funny. And actually, since the AlphaTauri um, DTM team runs Ferraris, and given that Apt is going to be sponsored by Red Bull, that would actually kind of make sense to maybe switch to Ferrari.
It's really
But
just one of those like moments. Like there are so many moments in like motorsports where I'm like, this is just like it's just a meme. Like this is not it's not serious.
yes, no, I love sports car racing, but it is full of the most unserious people imaginable. It's very, very funny. Um, so yeah, we'll see what happens there.
I mean, hell, even to some degree, DTM is not that serious. I'll be
Oh,
honest.
absolutely not.
At least from what I saw last year. Like last year, the driving standards in that series, good lord.
Yeah, it was super duper low. They're beating and banging off each other. It's like you'd swear, if it weren't for the modern body shapes and like modern powertrains, like you'd swear it was NASCAR in 1993, the way they were beating and banging on each other. It's just like, okay, so this is what we do now. And then, of course, all of the chatter about, track limits, wham, blah, blah, yada, yada. It's like, oh my God.
The trackless thing is so ridiculous. Like the first thing I'm like, okay, like some of those races were so like the one race I can remember from last year in DTM that was like particularly bad was like the Norris ring. That was horrible. That was
Hmm.
so bad. At least the first race was. I'm like, damn. Like literally, like that was one of the first races of like DTM that I watched, and I'm like, this is how we race here? Like I thought this was a classy party. I thought we had class here. Apparently not.
No, no, they have a bunch of trashy bitches in DTM. That is just that is what that category is. And I mean, truth be told, certainly if you're in the mood for it, it's kind of fun, but it can get a little frustrating to watch. And then, never mind the infamous 2021 season finale, where we have folks just straight up killing each other. I mean, and that just looks like NASCAR from 15 years ago, with folks just killing each other for the race win in the championship.
Literally, the race start at the North Ring race, the first one, literally looked like I couldn't tell if I was watching BTM touring car racing or if I was watching NASCAR at Coda because it looked identical. It looked exactly the freaking same. Where people literally just it's just a huge conglomerate of cars just going into the turn at the same time, and then people inevitably getting spun out and hit. It's just like, oh my God. And then the track limits were also another stupid thing. Even like this season was kind of an issue, I think, because at least it's like one race they did. I think it was at the Red Bull Ring where it was like the whole field just made the executive decision that the track limits was gonna be all the way to the fence at some turns, and it really wasn't like race control or the series could do anything. So I mean, fuck it, you'd have to penalize literally everybody that did it, and you'd end up with another F1 situation where you have so many track limit violation penalties that you can't even physically sort through them all and have to wait till the fucking race ends to dish out the penalties. It's like, oh my god.
Yeah, it is. It's DTM is wild. Um, it is. It truly is kind of the wild west of sports car racing over there right now. So I don't know if how much of that they're going to get under control, because I would argue at this point that might be kind of part of the charm. So knowing them, they'll probably
They're
lean
dipping
into
into
it a bit.
NASCAR territory, which
They really are, which is a slippery slope, as we have seen from NASCAR. It goes from being
they're gonna go from having virtually no track limits at some of their races to green white checkers in all of a span of like a year.
yeah, at the rate they're going, yeah, you are absolutely right. So we will
Overtimes, green white checkers, stage breaks.
now I want to set up a simulation that's sports car racing with stage breaks, because that sounds wonderfully cursed. Okay. Anyway, well, truth be told, I took the week off because I'm sick, so maybe I'll fire that up at some point here over the rest of the week and see how that goes. But mm, but yes, no, DTM is just like I said, DTM is just wild. When you're in the mood for it, it's kind of funny, but I can imagine that actually getting very frustrating to watch week in and week out. Lord knows I grumble about NASCAR enough every week, so been there, done that.
I
But
mean, even like the going back to the track limits thing, I feel like that's not even, to be honest, like the issue is just like the circuit, truthfully. Like they have all this like extra pavement on the circuit that technically isn't the circuit, and they expect drivers to stay off of that. And when drivers, being drivers, are all like, you know what, because it's pavement, I should be able to race there. And the racing series is like, no, you can't race there, and we told you you can't race there, and you're giving out penalties. Then it's like it just becomes ridiculousness. And truthfully, it could all be solved if they just added grass. Because with grass, the limit is the limit. You're not going to have people going off in the grass because you'll lose a lot of time doing that. You'll
mhm.
be hemorrhaging time and positions, and people obviously don't want that to happen. So it's self-policing in a way. Like it's like why tracks like Road America and Road Atlanta are pretty good, and they do a good job of that because most of those tracks are just natural terrain. It's just grass. So if people do go off, they face consequences for it right then and there. It's not necessarily like having to wait until after the race to face any consequences. It's like, no, you're getting punished immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and Brie and I, we actually talked about this a bit last episode. Broadly speaking, I do agree that grass is certainly that is the easy solution. The big thing is, especially in DTM, a lot of the European series, they also hold motorcycle racing. Moto 1000, Moto GP, and the various uh, sub-series of subsects of MotoGP. And grass is spooky on a bike. So part of a lot of those pavement runoffs is, at least if the driver is, or a rider, I guess, is, basically high side on the bike, then at least the extra pavement runoff gives them some time to get it under control before they get yeeted into a sand trap or a fence or, well, frankly,
And some
another
of them
bike.
also have like they have curbing too, and like the extra pavement. I'm like, the curbing is going to end up hurting somebody. I mean, it's not too big of a deal with like sports cars, touring cars, because they can kind of go over them with minimal issues. I mean, you can have NASCAR at the Indy Road Course in 2021 type of debacle where it's like people go over the curbing and it ends up tearing up their entire car. They get launched off of it, but I don't know.
Yeah, like I said, the track limits, it's so sticky, and it's part of the reason, why multi-purpose circuits. While, I understand the tracks want to do it because that's how they make a lot of their revenues, getting asses and seats and doing that as often as is possible. But when you have these discipline circuits, compromises have to be made all around for all of them. So yeah, you'll get extra runoff area for the motorcycles, but then you have these, big fuck off curbs before you get to that pavement runoff. That, well, that's what throws them across the catch fence is hitting that curve. But then, it's meant to just be an annoyance to sports cars. Or you'll have, a gravel trap, which is, same thing, a bike will just dig in and you'll just high side a bike in, the gravel traps. But, it's a safer way of getting, a car slowed down. Or you have the big, like the Paul Ricard, Sochi autodromes, those huge concrete runoffs where there's no curbing at all. And again, great for bikes, but then you have to deal with the guys on four wheels who just, abuse track limits to no end. It's just, there really is no perfect solution when you start talking about these these circuits that are designed for multi-disciplines.
Yeah, honestly, it's probably the best explanation. There is no perfect solution, and it probably now will continue to be a problem.
Yeah, what it could be interesting, and I know some circuits do it to some capacity, where the white line is, some load sensors basically just under the pavement. String them around in the places where it's found that track limits are abused the most often. And then, you can do, from that end, you can do a sort of semi-automated race control where you get a few strikes, maybe you get a few strikes and maybe then the actual humans can go back and look at that and go, well, actually in the context of that incident, they were going too wide through there, so the guy on the outside ran a little wide, whatever, it's fine. But on their own X amount of strikes, and then start dishing out time penalties every time they trip it. I don't know if that's the solution. As I am fond of saying, there are people who are smarter than me who get paid a whole hell of a lot more than I do to figure these things out. So, I will not sit here and pretend that I am, all knowing, all seeing, and have the answer. But, that's an idea.
All I know is the answer is probably not those damn sausage curves or whatever they are.
Oh,
Those are
good God, no.
horrible.
Yeah, because they ruin formula cars, they ruin the bikes.
They don't even ruin Formula cars. They just send Formula cars to Mars. And
Yeah,
then it's like,
yeah, no, it's so bad, the installation of the sausage curbs, and we've seen it go wrong every time. Particularly the FIA tries to do it. They'll install sausage curbs, and then that first session, somebody runs a little wide and gets sent to orbit. And it's just like, oh my God, why? Why did you do this? And especially, given that the last 5 years we've had, fatalities, and particularly the junior Formula series. It's like, it just seems like such a bad idea to have them there. But like I said, that's one person's take on track limits. Certainly feel free to sound off, at uh VL VL Vibes podcast on X, Twitter, if you want to get in touch and tell me how stupid and wrong I am, because, well, I'll be happy to entertain that. But anything else before we close out the episode?
I think that's everything.
Yep, that's about all. Certainly, that's about all I got too. Once again, I'm gonna plug it again, but we're working on the Victory Lane Vibes blend at Eastside Roasters. Certainly, if you want a prototype bag, contact me at a Spectre of sorts on basically every platform. Spectre spelled like the Bond movie. Or reach out to at eastside.roasters, roasters with a Z, on Instagram if you're interested. Give me a mailing address. And when I'm sending out the prototype bags, which I'm hoping will be in the next couple of weeks, ideally, I will do that. And then we're hoping that sometime early to mid-December, we will have the final production bags out. But of course, I need taste testers. So drop me a line if you're interested. If not, then we will be advertising the hell out of the coffee bags when bags of coffee when they're ready. So, maybe something to pick up for the holidays. But certainly until next time. Well, actually, before we do, JT. So I figure it'll probably be what Las Vegas, bar and WEC season review will probably be the next episode.
Yeah, probably. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay. And and of course we'll as we get closer to that date, if we have other stuff to add, we will add it. But until then, thank you so much for watching and until next time, y'all. Bye-bye.
Peace.